ahead and do the pledge and stuff first, so let me get here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start without a quorum on informational items. The clerk has noticed we are short quorum, but we do want to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. If folks could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and we'll have the clerk read the announcement for those watching online.
This meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District is cablecast live without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Local Government Affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse cable system. This meeting is being closed captioned and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated on Sunday, May 26, 2019 at 4 p.m. and Monday, May 27, 2019 at 2 p.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker form located on the table in the back of the chambers and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Also, at this time, please silence your phones until the conclusion of today's meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If the clerk could please read the first item on our agenda.
Before we begin the meeting, can we go ahead and take roll call?
Do we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Well, we'll go ahead and ask for roll call. Yeah.
Okay. Carr?
Way out here.
Daniels? Frost?
Here.
Gaylord? Guerra?
Here.
Hanson? Harris?
Here.
Kennedy? Lamson?
Here.
Lee? Natoli? Peters? Cerna? And Terry?
Here. The clerk recognizes an absence of a quorum. We'll continue on with the first item on the agenda.
First item on the agenda is the Air Pollution Control Officer's Report as given by Dr. Ayala.
Thank you. Good morning. Good to see you all. Just a quick reminder, we don't see you next month because one of the consent items is the normal cancellation of the June meeting, so we can give you a break. I have a brief APCO report. I have two items that I'd like to share with you all. And the first one is probably the one that I'd like you to pay more attention to, simply because as we speak, we have a delegation led by our staff getting ready to testify at an ARB board meeting that is currently taking place. One of the items that the ARB is considering is the guidelines that apply to this program that we've talked to you before, the community air protection. And these guidelines are going to set the stage in terms of how we are able to invest in our AB 617 community. Some of the cap-and-trade funding that, with your support, we've been successful in procuring and attracting to the region. So I am going to get into a little bit of the weeds, but again, I need this board to be aware of that. We have had discussions with Supervisor Cerna, so he is fully aware of what we are going to be saying. And obviously, we are engaged with the leadership at ARB. In addition to that, we gave you a copy of the formal comment letter that is going to be submitted as part of our testimony. But basically, as a bottom line, what we're asking the state is for more flexibility. We basically want a bigger sandbox. What ARB is proposing, what the staff is proposing to the board, from our perspective, is too constraining. It's not going to allow us to do the kinds of things that our community in South Sacramento, Florida is advising us to do. So we're going to be there along with a delegation of the stakeholders. You'll see in the letter a very impressive list of partners that have signed on to these comments. So that's basically what is taking place right now. Again, as a reminder, this applies to on the order of anywhere between 12 and $15 million that we are, yes.
Mr. Chair, Mr. APCO, could I stop you for a minute so
Sure.
the clerk could call the roll and establish a quorum?
Do we need 9?
Carr,
Still way out here.
That's Steve at the other end.
Daniels, Frost,
Here.
Gaylord, Guerra,
Here.
Hanson, Harris, Kennedy, Lamson,
Here.
Lee,
Here.
Natoli,
Here.
Peters, Cerna, and Terry.
Here.
We have a
Great.
quorum.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We've established a quorum. Mr. APCO, please continue.
Director Carr, I promise you, we're going to revisit the policy for seating arrangements. We're going to give you a boarding. Back to the guidelines. So again, as a reminder, we've been successful in procuring cap and trade funding to come to our district, to your communities, and we're anticipating anywhere on the order of $12 to $15 million for the next fiscal year. So this is the reason why we are so interested in having the maximum flexibility possible. It's still applying and staying within the framework of the legislation. So we are, as I said, a delegation is there testifying on our behalf. And basically, the 3 points we want to do is we want to not be restricted in terms of not being included in part of the group of communities that can do projects simply because we were not formally identified as a community that requires or that needs an emission reduction program. Because that's one point that the ARB board made very clear, that it really doesn't matter whether you are identified as an air quality monitoring only community or one that has to do an emission reduction program right away. So we want to move forward because, as you have heard from our steering committee chair and vice chair in the past, we're developing a very good interaction with the steering committee, with the community, and there's expectations that we put this money to work and begin to mitigate the impacts in the community. So let's stop there. Like I said, it is a bit into the weeds of the program, but I wanted to make you aware that this is taking place.
Thank you, and I do want to acknowledge Board Member Larry Carr's work in the South area on that with the steering committee as well. Thank you for that update.
The second item, again, is something that I'm sure you heard about or saw in the news. This particular report actually came out 2 days before our last meeting, so we just didn't have sufficient time to put together an update for you. But again, it is a very relevant piece of information. The American Lung Association does this State of the Air report yearly. They've done it for 20 years. And you can see the statistics. I mean, it's basically things that we've known for a long time, things that we know we're going to be challenged with for many years to come. We're not meeting the ambient air quality standards at the moment. But the important thing is that we have a plan how to get there, and I think that's really the key here. But again, just in terms of the numbers, I think it is pretty compelling when you think that our area, Sacramento, is number 5 in the nation for ozone pollution. And you can see that most of the cities in the top 10 are California cities. We're doing a little better on particle pollution, but we're still up there. We're number 15, so we're in the top of all the cities around the nation in terms of air pollution when it comes to particles. So I needed you to be aware of this. Like I said, I don't see this as a negative. I think this is just looking at the data, the same data that we collect, the same data that we analyze. So this is just basically a reminder of how important it is that we continue to do the kinds of things that we are doing with your help. And what is different about this report, and this will be my last point, is that American Lung did a very nice job putting into context the climate penalty that air quality is paying, meaning how much more difficult it is going to be to reach clean air because of the climate impacts that we are already seeing. This is something that we've known for a long time, but American Lung is doing a really nice job kind of putting the nexus between air quality and climate very starkly and clearly.
Dr. Ayala, we have a question here or comment from Board Member Harris.
Dr. Ayala, can you articulate that a little bit more? What was the nexus or the key point that they demonstrated as, the connection between climate change and air quality degradation?
A warming climate, so let's take ozone pollution, for example. Ozone pollution is basically photochemical reactions in the ambient air. So it's basically organic emissions, NOx emissions, they cook up in the atmosphere, and when you have a lot of sun and heat, it's a very efficient cooking process.
Right.
A warming climate is going to make that process much more efficient. So what that means is everything that we're doing to advance on ozone pollution, we're going to take 2 steps back because a warming climate is going to make it that much more difficult. So that's just one example. On the particle side, we're living it, right? I mean, the fire pollution is just, going to make it that much harder. So, and it's interestingly because, this is going to require more action, right? I mean, the ambient air quality standards are based on health. The number one and only consideration is what do we need the standards to be to protect public health? They're not considering, the climate penalty or anything else like that. So again, work in progress. But again, I welcome the fact that American Lung is putting a big bright light, spotlight on this issue, on the nexus between climate and air quality.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ayala, and I think Board Member Harris has brought up the past history of smog days back in growing up in LA, and I don't think we want to get to number 1 where we get back to smog days. So I think keeping an eye on the fact that we're number 5 on ozone, and also that we have made improvements though on the particulates. I mean, I think that's a significant recognition to the staff here at the Air District for working on the issue of particulates. And thank you for that, Dr. Ayala. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. If the clerk could please read the item.
The consent calendar, the first item is the April 25th, 2019 Board of Directors meeting minutes. And the second item will be the cancellation of the June 27th, 2019 Board of Directors meeting.
Okay, members, move the calendar. How quickly the actions move when there's a cancellation of a meeting here. So without further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Consent calendar is approved. If the clerk could please read the next item.
Next is the discussion calendar. Here we have a presentation from Valley Vision's new environmental poll in the 8-county region. Given the presentation will be Bill Mueller, Chief Executive, and Evan Schmidt, Director of Strategy and Evaluation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see you, Bill and Evan, again.
See you, Mr. Chair, board members. My name is Bill Mueller. I'm the CEO of Valley Vision. And we're very excited to be invited to join you today to say a little bit about the latest in a series of public information scientific poll that was done just several months ago. So I'm going to kick it off, and then Evan Schmidt, who's our senior director and our research director at Valley Vision, will sort of walk you through the results, and we're hopeful that we'll have a chance to have a discussion around your questions around the poll and possibly what the import of those questions are. So just a little bit of context. As you know, Valley Vision is a civic leadership group, and one of the things that I am very proud of is that I serve at the pleasure of a 33-member board of directors that includes chancellors and presidents and CEOs of various hospital systems, as well as leaders from different foundations. They're committed to a better quality of life in Sacramento. And Valley Vision focuses on economic, social, and environmental issues. We believe in advancing a triple bottom line solution to the challenges that we face. And we work very closely with the Air District through the Cleaner Air Partnership. What's important to know is that 2 years ago, our board said that there are not enough facts and evidence that are really informing our public policy today, or those facts that are available. There are so many of them, or that they're sort of distrusted, that an independent organization like Valley Vision, with no other interest than making the quality of life of our region better, is uniquely suited to do this work. So with that, we launched our research unit, and a core component of that work was to do fact-finding around public opinion. And so often today, it is so difficult for people who have very, very busy lives to be involved, frankly, in meetings like these, because they are raising their families and they're trying to earn a living and make ends meet. So our goal through this public opinion process is to be able to solicit the views scientifically of the residents of the greater Sacramento area and be able to bring them to you. So a couple more things to share. The first is that this is a scientific poll. So we take great pains, and in fact, our organization has used foundation funds in excess of $150,000 to bring you this capability through a partnership with the Institute for Social Research at Sac State. And as many of us know, it's very hard to do public opinion polling today. And that's because we all have mobile phones as opposed to a landline in our home. So there is a way through the effort that the Gallup company does globally that is sort of a leading global best practice when it comes to polling. And so we solicit over 100,000 residents, push them and pull them into a 20,000 person universe, and then using a scientific weighting and balancing process are able to distill a panel of 2,000 residents that are a perfect microcosm for the 2.5 million population of the Sacramento region. And they agree to work with us, and we ask them questions on a regular basis, and we're constantly refreshing that panel so that it is alive. So our first panel in our first poll was related to civic amenities. Our second was related to transportation and mobility. Our third was focused on livability, our benchmark poll, a way of being able to ask questions more broadly about our quality of life. So we asked questions about homelessness and housing and education and healthcare access, in addition to economic growth. And important to know, we also asked value-based questions. We asked whether people felt included in their communities. And so that data is available to you at valleyvision.org. We're here today to talk to you about our latest poll, which we also hope to do on a regular basis, related to the environment. We were very curious about how local residents felt about the issues that impact them, about air quality, but also about water and energy, and in particular about climate change. We know that the fact that climate change is in our political dialogue nationally and at the state level, but we also know that there is a perception that we are divided on that issue. We uncovered some very interesting data that we want to share with you today that we think is very important for you to know about where your residents, where your voters are on this issue. And we're much more aligned than you would believe. And so we're excited to sort of show you these results. And again, Evan Schmidt will sort of walk you through the nature of the poll and be able to answer questions. I'm gonna sit down while she does so. If you have questions, I might join Evan to field them. So with that, Evan Schmidt.
Thanks, Bill, and good morning. Really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to be sharing this data with you. I think it's a really good story about our region, and I think and hope it will be really useful for you in your work as well. So Bill already talked a lot about the methodology of this survey, so just to quickly touch on this, we surveyed a little less than 1,000 residents across the 8-county region and achieved a margin of error of plus or minus 3%. We feel like this is really in line with survey best practices, and it gives us a very good degree of confidence in the findings that we have. Oh, and I'll say one thing about the timing of this survey in the field. So this was December 2018, just a few months ago, and you might remember that it was just after the Camp Fire incident. And so climate change and health risks from air quality were really high in people's mind, and I think that that's reflected in the survey, as you'll see. And that's one reason why we really would like to do this survey again, so we really see this as something we'll touch back on and see how the results might change based on whatever conditions are going on with the weather and with the climate, as well as seasons and things like that. So to get just to the big picture, overall residents in the Sacramento region really care deeply about the environment. They believe more should be done to protect it. And it was really striking to us the level of intensity that people felt around this. So when we're looking at this survey, a lot of our percentages are in the 80s and 90s of people saying, I feel strongly about this, I care deeply about this. That's been unusual in the experience that we've had with our survey so far. So that was one of the first things that really jumped out at us about this survey. Our opening question is just, how important are these very essential aspects of life, like clean drinking water, soil, air, bodies of water? We had more than 90% saying, I feel really strongly these are incredibly important. But then we asked use the same characteristics to ask the question, do you see these as environmental problems in your community? And that's what this bar chart shows. And you can see that polluted air was really people's top concern that they were most intensely concerned about. So that was, again, something that was really on the forefront of people's mind as they were taking this survey. We also asked some questions about land use and preservation, and we wanted to know how important was the preservation of open space, wild space, and farmland to the people in the region. And you can see that people felt really strongly about each and every one of these, with farmland being on top. And we wanted to know, in relation to housing or retail and office space, what are some trade-offs? So what would people like to see in terms of preservation of open, wild, or farmland space, or development? And so if you look on with the green chart with the highlighted or with the bolded numbers, you can see that really down the line, preservation really came out on top above development, especially as it relates to retail and office space. We asked a lot of questions about climate change. The first one being, do you believe that humans have contributed to climate change? And we found overall 88% of people in our region said yes, they believe that's the case. This was a question that we really wanted to break out by political affiliation, because I feel like it's a common story in the national media that this is a very politically divisive topic. But what we really found in our region, it is not so much. So, you often have Republicans and conservatives leaning towards a more skeptical point of view on climate change. And here we have 75%, so 3 out of 4 Republicans saying they do believe that humans have contributed to climate change. And we wanted to know, do you think it's happening now, or do you think it's going to happen at some point in the future? And so that top cluster of bar charts are, again, broken down politically, expressing that people believe that it's already begun to happen. And so overall, that's 70%, but when you look broken down politically, the majority of people in any political affiliation believe that the effects of climate change have already begun to happen. And then for those who don't, they, for the most part, believe that they'll start happening within the next few years. And we wanted to know what people were thinking about in terms of climate risk. So how concerned are they about the different possible effects of climate change, especially the things that we feel we're most likely to see here in this region. So smoke in the air from wildfires, drought, hotter temperatures and more frequent heat waves, wildfires in the vicinity of your home, and flooding were the characteristics that we looked at. And you can see that 80% of people really see smoke in the air from wildfires as something they have already experienced. And given the timing of the survey, that's not a big surprise. We were joking that maybe the other 20% were on vacation in November, but that did come out very clear. And then we also broke our survey out by subpopulation. So we wanted to know across different demographics what different subpopulations think on these different topics. So one thing that really popped out for us is that hotter temperatures and more frequent heat waves were seen as a problem within different subpopulations more than they came out in the overall top line findings. And so for those making $30,000 to $50,000 a year, blacks, Latinos, millennials, women, and Democrats, that was a bigger concern for them. And for some of those findings, that's really consistent with research that shows that vulnerable populations are often more vulnerable to climate risks and more likely to experience things like hotter temperatures and other climate risks. When we ask people their level of concern about the effect that climate risk will have for them in the future, you can see that the well-being of future generations came out most strongly, with the majority of the population seeing this as a threat to our basic well-being. Across all of these topics, women showed higher levels of concern. And you can see that the majority of the population is concerned about public health and safety, the well-being of future generations, and significant concerns around public infrastructure as well. We asked some questions about cap and trade, and we actually didn't include these in our initial report, but we're working on a follow-up report that's going to come out this summer that's really going to dive more into environmental investments, so as they relate to cap and trade, but also as they relate to additional costs that people might be willing to incur in order to help the environment. So we did a little bit of education around what cap and trade is, and we asked people their preferences around cap and trade. I wanted to share this finding with you because I think it's important to the work of the Air District. We asked, how important is it to you that the revenues from cap and trade are spent in disadvantaged communities? And you can see that almost half of the respondents said it was very important. And if you look at the somewhat important, then that goes all the way up to over 75%. And so that's something when, again, provided with a little education around what's happening, people did value that aspect of the cap and trade revenue.
Mr. Chair, can I just, before you leave that slide, can I ask a quick question? So is there a full understanding by the respondents of what cap and trade is? I mean, that's a word that may be familiar to folks in these chambers and those that work with it, but when you ask 985 people what cap and trade is, they can all tell you that, or do you have to explain it, or I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I summarized the question in this way for you all, but that really wasn't how it was necessarily expressed in the survey. First of all, we did kind of a test question to ask people, what's your opinion about cap and trade without an explanation? Okay. What's your opinion about cap and trade with an explanation? And what's your opinion about that is cap and trade without naming it as such? And so that's kind of the more detailed report that we're going to come out, but as part of that context, there was more, like I said, more education around what it is. And even I'm using the term disadvantaged communities here, but that was not used in the survey. I think it was low income neighborhoods or something like that.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. And kind of along those same lines, we asked people if they have the perception that air quality is worse in lower income neighborhoods. And overall, 42%, so less than half of the population, agreed with that statement. But when you broke it down by city, suburb, or small town rural, that number went up for the city population. And so there's a little over majority of the population that recognizes that air quality can be more of a health risk to low income populations and neighborhoods. We wanted to know, and we asked a lot of questions about how climate change will impact different aspects of people's life, including quality of life, but also the economy. And so that's what this question gets at, is how much do you think climate change is a threat to the economy, and how much is it a threat to the quality of life? And so when you combine the very serious and somewhat serious, you've got over 65 to 70% of people who really do see it as a threat in the future, with slightly more seeing it as a threat to quality of life. And kind of diving into the economy and government's role in climate change, we wanted to know how much intervention people think government should have into issues around climate change. So you can see on the bar chart, the top cluster of bars is kind of the most pro-environment stance that people could take, and it's that state and local government should do whatever it takes to protect the environment. The next cluster down is it's important to take action and do so in a way that supports rather than damages job growth. And then the last one is kind of the most anti-environment, saying environmental laws and regulations cost too many jobs and hurt the economy. And so you can see that the population is very supportive of the environment and really resting in those top two categories. This is another one that's broken out by political affiliation. And so when you do that, you can see that over the majority of the population of any political affiliation believes that there is a strong role for government in climate action. We really wanted to know what people think if you think about the relationship between environmental regulations and environmental protection and jobs in the economy. And what we learned is that 66% of respondents believe that efforts to reduce climate change will either have no impact on jobs or will increase jobs. And so one of the takeaways I had from that is this story that environmental regulations and environmental protection is a hindrance to job growth, is a hindrance to our economy, is really potentially an old story in California, or at least in our region, and that people really see this as an avenue for innovation and job growth and economic growth. People are really supportive of clean energy. So we asked about solar panel farms and wind turbine farms, and people's preferences around what type of energy sourcing to expand. So you can see from the bar chart on the left that people were really supportive of the clean energy sources and less so of the more conventional energy sources. And then when we asked, are you willing to pay more for renewable energy, we had almost 50% saying yes, they would be willing to pay more. We also asked a lot of questions around individual responsibility. So what have people done in the past to help the environment? What are they willing to do in the future? And what motivates them to take action, or what are the barriers that stop them from taking action? So when we look at this bar chart is showing in the blue bar actions that people have taken in the last year, and in the orange bar things that they're very or extremely interested in pursuing in the future. So looking at that top level, conserving water and energy, that's something that people are already doing and they're interested in continuing to do. I would say the same with walking, biking, and taking public transit or bus. And then when you go down the bar chart and look at just those last three categories, for example, you see a pretty big gap between what people have done in the past but what they would like to do in the future. So I think in some of these instances, it could be about upfront costs. So buying or leasing an EV and installing solar panels is quite expensive, but people are interested in doing it. Joining a green energy program, it could be that people don't have the right education. But in any case, that gap really represents potential points of intervention for agencies, whether that's education or incentives or other ways of kind of trying to figure out how do we capitalize on people's interest in taking these actions, even when they haven't been able to do it in the past. In some research coming up, we want to kind of break out some population profiles. And one profile that's really important to us is the millennial profile, just because this is the actions that millennials take will really determine our future course in the next 25 plus years. And so we really want to know what do they think about all of this. And really and this is just a teaser chart, because really across the board, millennials feel more intensely about the environment than other age categories. So if everyone's really pro-environment, millennials are really, really pro-environment and really believe that more should be done. So this is a chart that shows their level of concern about some of these basic environmental characteristics, and you can see when you set them up against the other age categories that they're really oftentimes double the intensity of that response. So really our takeaways, people care deeply about the environment. They believe more should be done at the individual level by business and by government. I think that one challenge that we had in the report, and I think just a challenge around the environment, is that it's such a huge issue. It's hard to feel like individuals can make a difference. It's sometimes even hard to feel that the region can make a difference. We were able to pull out a lot of examples of local agencies, including the SacMetro Air District and others, who are taking concrete action. And we also highlighted some policies and some other things that are going on that can help make a difference. And we're doing a lot of work to make a difference as well. So we have our Clean Economy Impact Area. I don't think a lot of you are very familiar with the SacMetro Air District is a supporter of and a partner in much of those activities, but that includes the Cleaner Air Partnership. statewide efforts that we participate in, like the CRC, the Capital Region Climate Readiness Collaborative. Meg Arnold sits on the Mayor's Climate Commission. We've been involved just in a lot of different activities around the region. So our next action, presentations to stakeholder and partners. Here we are. This is one check mark on there, but we're going to continue to do our tour and really try to get this data out in the community. I think that we really see this as a call to action and a validation of for decision makers to say people in this region really care about this issue, and we hope that this data can really validate things that people are already doing and spark new actions as well where they're not. Where there's less action than we would like. We're doing some follow-up research. I already told you a little bit about that. With the support of the Air District, we're doing engagement with the environmental justice community. We feel like this is a really important aspect of this data to look at how people in vulnerable populations not only are thinking about the environment, but where are the areas that we can improve, that we can help inform and improve health when it is being affected by environmental concerns. So we'd like to dive in deeper with people who are involved in the environmental justice community to kind of learn how we can take action in effective ways. And for our livability poll, we did for the first time a community forum at Sac State where we invited just an open invitation of anybody who'd like to come kind of dive into the data. And we're planning on doing that again this summer. And we're excited about that.
Please keep me informed on that. Always enjoy going to Sac State.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. And as part of the effort to get this data out into the community and into the hands of people who can really use it, and with the support of the SacMetro Air District, we have this interactive website that really highlights the key data points. It has some interactive functions, and it makes the data really accessible and easy to find, easy to use for the community. So we're really excited about that, and we really invite you to go check that out at environment.valleyvision.org. And with that, we'd love it if you check out our other public opinion polling. There's the web link right there, and contact me with any interest in follow-up presentations or any more questions about the data. And Bill and I are happy to take questions now.
Great, thank you. And we have Board Member Harris punched up here to speak. Board Member Harris.
Thank you, Evan. Really interesting presentation and interesting questions. In one of your earlier slides, you pointed out that people were interested in preservation of ag land and open space. And certainly that supports the idea that the city of Sacramento has to encourage infill development. The problem is right now that we're experiencing is that cost. So it's more costly to develop infill, and that means higher purchase prices or rental rates. So conflicting things there, what will be interesting is to see if people really feel that. I mean, it's easy to think, yeah, of course I want to preserve open space, but greenfield development is cheaper, and people are attracted to those developments because of urban problems like homelessness and things like that. They think they can move away from those kinds of issues. But interesting research. I do hope that that desire to preserve open space really becomes a core value, because we need to do infill. It meets all of our goals for lowering VMT, CO2 emissions, all of the above. So I really hope that the research that you've done here is indicative of a more core value.
Great, thank you. And I've got our Vice Chair Frost and then Carr on the speakers list, but I'll ask Bill to answer that.
I just wanted to have just a brief reaction. One is that we hear you very clearly, and one of the very interesting things that is happening is that having done 4 polls, we're recognizing patterns when you ask questions about livability and now about the environment, about where that overlap is. In our livability poll, we asked the question, do you want to embrace the boom and see more homes developed in the Sacramento region? Or do you want to preserve things as they are and not build additional homes in the region? And the answer was 51% want the region to grow and 49% don't want to add new houses. So we are nearly equally divided in this region on whether we should add more houses or not. Now, the interesting story that I would relay is that Valley Vision is not standing pat on this information. We're using it to mobilize action. We brought together the Northern California Building Industry Association, various cities and counties, the Council of Governments, the City of Sacramento, and others, and had a roundtable discussion about that very finding. And what was interesting, especially with affordable housing developers and developers, is that even before we were able to finish the sort of describing what was on the slide presenting to them, the room burst out in laughter. And the response was, we live that every day. This is our challenge, is that there isn't sort of a common, view on this. So our hope is that we can take that, sort of inertia and effort at a need for a very clear vision about housing in the Sacramento region, blend it with this information about the environment and future polls to be able to sort of create greater clarity and hopefully community vision around those issues.
Well, I can tell you that as a representative trying to push transit-oriented development in my district, I live that contradiction daily too. It's really a tough one to move through. You can only please half the people. It'd be nice if the needle would move. And it would be great, I think, if you took your polls and sort of cross-correlated them, because these kinds of discussions are really powerful.
Great, thank you, Board Member Harris. Vice Chair Frost.
I'm appreciate this. This is interesting and surprising in some ways. When you first introduced it, Bill, you said this was a scientific poll, but it seems like a public opinion poll.
Forgive me, it's both. So the method that we use is based on the Gallup industry's sort of national best practice or global best practice, and it is very much scientific. So it's a random sample. We use scientific methods of weighting and balancing, and we make sure that we are able to determine the results and that it's scientifically verifiable.
So you're saying it's not a Facebook poll?
It is not here's a random group of people and somebody, whoever wants to, can respond. It is a closed system, very rigorously developed and created, and you would see the same sort of methodology you would see for any other sort of Gallup-related poll. What we have done is use the same method and incorporated it for an 8-county region rather than the entire United States.
And the idea is not only that it's representative of the region as a whole, which it is, but also you reach that threshold of about 1,000 people, and if you were to survey another 1,000 people, your percentages and breakdowns really wouldn't change, because the idea is that you have, through weighting and creating that representative sample, you've reached the population threshold where you can say this truly is representative of what people think.
Yeah, because like on some of the questions are pretty straightforward, but it's more complex than one might think. Like the question of air pollution is more serious health threat in lower income areas, and opinions around that. But air pollution isn't really tied to low income. It's more tied to, you can probably sell houses to low-income people under this freeway, but you're not going to sell houses to higher incomes. So they end up being in those areas where air pollution is. So it's like
I think what would also be important for everybody to know, and we probably breezed over a little bit of the methodology, is that even our questions are often not our own. We're looking at best practices around questions that have been asked in other communities, frankly, so that we can compare them. So for example, in our livability study, we adopted the National Realtors Association question set that they do on a regular basis. The Economist Intelligence Unit asked some very interesting questions, and they've been doing it for years. So rather than making it up, we're using sort of the scientific method that others have used, so that we're trying to sort of reduce the potential for error.
I'm not surprised that air quality is important. Even, anyone who's older, who's lived in LA like I have, understands what air pollution can become and doesn't want it. And who wouldn't want clean air and all those good things? My last question is it possible for us to get a copy of this entire survey so that we can analyze it and look at it? This is really good information, and I just think it would be so helpful to be able to look at it and take a deeper dive on the entire survey.
You bet. And imagine that what is available to you right now is 3 different levels of information. If you were to go to the web link, if you were to go back just one slide, Evan. If you were to go to this web link, this is the easy access. You can look at it in 3 minutes, and it gives you sort of the high profile. So this is level 1. It's if you don't have a lot of time, but you're interested in all the information that has been provided here, it's in an interesting format meant to be really consumable. The next level up from that is there is a 22-page report that goes into depth and provides the basic background. What Evan and I want you to know is that we're sitting on a huge data file that we could not possibly sort of put in a 22-page report. There's just too much information. And what's more is that we can divide and cut and slice the data that we have. And one of the invitations that we've made to your APCO and others is, do you have a specific question? You do? Well, we would be interested in getting back into the database and running that information. So,
can I get the 22-page? Because I have people that are experienced with surveys, and they'll know what question they want to ask. So
Perfect.
Can that work?
Yes, if you go to that web link, it's available.
And then they'll
exactly
just contact you. We'll contact you if we have questions or something.
Vice Chair Frost, I'll make it easier on you. I'll work with our clerk, and we'll make sure that we get the information that you require to you. And any other board member that has interest, let us know, and we'll make sure that we
it might change the way I think about something, and I want to look at it. I want to know.
Some of us still like
it's all
paper
good.
too,
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you, Vice Chair Frost. Board Member Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you for the report. It's very informative, and I will go to the website and look at it deeper. And there are several dichotomies here. Mr. Harris pointed out one where people want to preserve open space, but some people want it to grow. What I found is people want growth, but not near them. And they want to preserve the open space so they can have that for themselves. But the point I wanted to ask you about is, are people really aware of the source of the major sources of air pollution? Do they know where it's coming from?
I found that the question around are low-income neighborhoods more at risk or have more health risk from air pollution. To me, that indicated that the people who were answering that question did have a sense. For example, I think freeway corridors is something that pop in people's mind. It seems to me that there is a general higher level of education around that than there used to be, but I'm sure there's some people that are not aware.
And if I could add, so one of the things to remember is that this is sort of an unfiltered, this is where the public is based on the public information that's available to them in their very busy lives. So our job as the pollster, as you heard on the climate change question that Supervisor Natoli asked, is we don't want the labels that we attach to this to create confusion. So we literally asked the cap and trade question 3 different ways. And by the way, there were 3 different answers to the same question based on what the label is, which is very interesting to us. So part of this should be motivation, that we have the ability to do that education. And I know that particularly in underserved communities, that in our experience managing the Cleaner Air Partnership, there's not always the understanding that 80% of our pollution is mobile sources as opposed to stationary sources. But it's the car detailer or the auto shop that's right in my neighborhood that I might have locked in on as the source of the issue, when in fact the data and evidence isn't there. So part of this should be, an opportunity to do that public education so that the public is reaching the right conclusions for the right reasons.
And what struck me, Bill and Evan, is the intensity that people care about the environment. And so that's on one hand. On the other hand, what have you done about it? And the intensity that we will do something later. It seems to me, I don't know how people are reconciling that in their minds. How you can hold those same two thoughts in your mind at the same time.
Well, we are human beings.
Yeah, our intentions sometimes are bigger than our actual actions. I think, for me, these surveys really are the beginning of a conversation. I think Bill's right. You're capturing people where they are right now, including their good intentions. And so when it comes, when the rubber meets the road, what are they willing to give up? I think that's where you have to use this as a tool in communication and use it as a conversation starter, because that question isn't answered within a survey that, even if it's a great survey, it's 15 minutes of your life to fill it out. The real work is what does it mean to you, and how do we carry on from here?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Guerra.
And Board Member Natoli.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just along that line of discussion, I think it may be important to see what the tolerance is too for where they're willing to pay. It's one thing to say, pay for cleaner water or cleaner air, but when you're getting hit the gas pump, you're getting hit in rent, you're getting hit in your electric bill, you're getting hit in your water bill, all the utilities, and there are other pressures. There are aging infrastructure, there are the wear and tear. I think, again, that may be a point in time or not, but I think that's one of the things when to one of the questions you asked about, is it stopping the growth of jobs and so forth? Not any one thing, not any two things, but I think cumulatively, and I think, to get to that, because that's important, because if I hear a common theme from folks that are sometimes generationally Californians or even more recent arrivals, folks appreciate the amenities we have here, but their tolerance, at least in conversation, is getting a bit stretched. I'll just tell you that, and we all know that. I mean,
Right.
And so, if you can go after one or two things, but it's not one or two things, it's a combination of, and I think that's that's kind of the threshold over time. To the point you were just making, that and whether you're a millennial or you're a baby boomer, how much freight can you bear over time to get to the things that are desirable to maintain that quality of life or improve it, to address issues that are real. So I think that.
So a couple of reactions. So one is that this is a public opinion poll. It's not a poll of business.
Right.
And so I wonder what would happen if we asked the business community on some of these issues, whether they would have a different point of view. So just want to put that on the table. But it should inform the business community, because their clients, their customers, have that point of view. And so if I were a business owner, that would be very important for me to know, because there's probably some additional public education that needs to happen and a bit of a breakdown there. The other is that, remember when I said that we're sitting on top of a big data pile? One of the things that we did not and have not yet publicized is that we did ask the question about, would you be willing to pay more, and in what ways, and what would that look like? So as a bit of a tease, that is forthcoming. We uncovered some information, and we're planning on rolling that out a little bit later, but frankly, we want some more time with that data to understand it a little bit better before we feel responsible enough with the information to be able to put it into the public space.
And just to highlight the point you're making and responding to, but I think another thing that I think is relevant is, the flight from the Bay Area because housing costs are too much, or because traffic congestion is this and that. Even though folks may come here to buy the house. A lot of them are still driving back there because the wages are such that they can make that particular choice in their lives to spend a lot of time commuting. But I think it also reflects, and again, maybe it's the larger data set for what's happening for California. Folks that are moving out of state, a lot of them who may have spent their a good deal of time here, have got the appreciation in the real estate, have good retirement. And so when that leaves the local economy, then it leaves us with a bigger hole, because folks that are starting out trying to buy a home and making ends meet, their disposable income may be far less, and then you have obviously the communities where you have folks who are struggling to buy each and every day. And so I think that's important, and I think it goes to as Californians, but certainly as folks in this region, what can we do to try to maintain the balance in a way that achieves the environmental goals that we find desirable, that are reflected in the polling data, but also that you don't, again, people make choices, and I hesitate to say they were driving people out, but I think people are clearly making choices, and they're taking disposable income and going to states that are adjacent, and whether that's Oregon or Nevada or Arizona, Idaho, whatever it is, and some of it may have social aspects to it that they think that the air's not good enough, or congestion's too bad, or there's a homeless issue, whatever it might be. Those are certainly choices that people make of their own conscience. But I'm concerned because you see that value, and I have colleagues who have retired who were born and raised here, who are now making choices to leave here, but they take that income with them. Right. And so then our economy, some of those drivers that help, reinvest in the next generation it leaves with them.
Well, so a couple of reactions, and this discussion probably reflects the reason why Valley Vision, if I could be somewhat immodest, is important, because we're not just focused on air quality, we're focused on housing and land use, because these things are connected. We have to stop dealing with them in silos, because if housing is unaffordable in the Bay Area, guess what's happening to the vehicle miles traveled of those people that are traveling these super commuters? It absolutely has an impact on our environmental standing.
Bill, and I'm going to ask you to tighten it up, because we do have another board member, and we're going to lose quorum in not too long here. So
and maybe a good sort of global wrap-up comment on the point. The Cleaner Air Partnership. I think we know the way to be successful where we balance economic and environmental issues. This organization has been around for over 30 years, and as I know, Supervisor, you've been part of the life of the Cleaner Air Partnership. Its central tenet is that you can do both, and it's argued that for the last 30 years. And what's more, how does it do it? It does it with incentive-based approaches that allows people to buy in. It's not a heavy-handed regulatory approach. It's a way that the business community and the environmental community and public health community can work together. And we find when you work on an incentive basis, as opposed to sort of a heavy-handed external sort of approach, that you're more apt to get creative, innovative solutions and really unlock the potential.
Thank you, Bill. I have Board Member Lampson.
I'll try to be fast. I see on the survey you have the jobs and economy concern, and I'm kind of along the same lines as Natola here. We in Galt just had a big, huge rate increase in our garbage because of the environmental and the 75% reduction, and then we're not going to be able to have the organic waste. So our residents' garbage rates went up 58%. They would have gone up maybe 200 or 100%, except we asked if it could kind of rest on some of the businesses. Well, then our businesses went up 200 to 700%. And now we're dealing with that. And if you go on the news, Galt's, I'm public enemy #1 right now. So we're trying to figure that out. But we keep getting all these regulations from the big cities that come on we're not quite rural, right? We're just barely not rural, and we're having a hard time dealing with that. So if that kind of, people are aware of that in the survey, yes, everyone loves the environment, we want to save the environment, but it's going to cost you 100% of your garbage rates or your water or your sewer.
we really have to think about that, especially on our senior citizens and our people just starting out. So I'd like to see a little more of that in the survey.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Labs. I'm just going to close with this. One, thank you for being here today. I think the information's great. Board members can bring it down, but I think it would be helpful if there is a binded copy of the material, that would be helpful. I know even though I use the online version, I like to write down on my binded version. I just want to close with saying that the slide that showed that the half of the people say that government should do whatever it takes to protect the environment, but almost the other half say that we should do it, but also do it in a way that supports rather than damages jobs. And I think that has been a strong message from this board, saying that moving forward, we should be thinking about how does it look for job employment and growth. I think the idea of the Future Mobility Center to look at jobs in a wide range, not just baccalaureate degree jobs, but jobs that can have apprenticeship programs or training programs that lead us towards better air quality, I think is an important thing. Thank you for being here. We have one last item here. If the clerk could please read that item.
Our next item is public hearings, fiscal year 2019-2020, Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District budget and fee schedule. Here to give a presentation is Jamil Moons, our Admin Services Division Manager.
And before we get going here, we've seen this presentation now, I think, almost 3 times. And we're going to lose our quorum here in about maybe 5 minutes. Yeah, if that. So if we could be judicious with that time and move forward. But I do want to thank the staff for having brought this to us over and over again to make sure we're familiar with the budget.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Guerrero and Directors. Jamil Moons. I will be very, very quick with the presentation. We are back here today to present the budget. And as quick background, we were here last month, and at that meeting we went into quite a bit of detail about the budget, our priorities, the trends, the historic trends, and the future forecast. We also brought to you a fee schedule. There were no directions from the board to change that budget, and staff has not proposed any change between last month and this month. I will note, though, in our re-review of all of our schedules, in the fee schedule, there was one fee that in that cell, the calculation miscalculated it, so we did make a correction to the emissions renewal fee within the schedule, but that's just a corrective action. So with that, it would be exactly the same proposed budget that we presented last month, and today we are asking you to approve it. Very quick review, across all 3 funds, total revenue, $65.4 million, expenditures 59.4. We are asking for authority in the resolution that comes to you today for expenditure authority across all 3 funds, 22.9 for the general fund, and as you can see, the others 1.1 and 33.3 for the special revenue.
Move approval.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? It's been
You have to
seconded.
open and close the public hearing.
There's been a motion to open and close the public hearing with the motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, do we have anyone signed up to speak from the clerk?
No.
No, there's no members of the public signed up to speak. With that, if there's no further discussion from the board, I'll ask all those in favor to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Great. Motion passes. We have a budget. Board Member Carr.
Yeah, I just want to give the AB 1234 report. Did go back on cap to cap as part of the air quality management team. We visited a number of offices, and what I emphasized was the collateral benefit of ride-share vehicles, electric vehicles, as a way to increase the income, disposable income in low-income families.
Thank you very much, Board Member Carr. I want to thank everyone who was here today to make the quorum. And if you see any of our colleagues, admonish them to help us make quorum. It makes it easier. And I will do the same. So thank you all for a good day, and we are adjourned at 10:10.
Is on that board I'm talking about.
Thank you. I did okay.
was on by Mark.